Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. When I was first getting into comics, I admit I seldom paid much mind to the names of creatives that made the books that I bought. Though, as time went on, reading comments from people on the internet, several creators would be regarded with reverence for their creations, extensive history with a certain book or character, or sheer talent. Certainly, artist George Perez was one of those creators, known for his uncanny ability to expertly draw a crowd with dozens of characters on a single page. But the man didn't only do the graphic art, but did a fair share of writing as well. Today, I'm taking issue with Silver Surfer Superman, which features the two survivors of their respectively doomed homeworlds as they deal with impish tricksters with clearly nothing better to do. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page, or turn our heads. Perez is joined by artists Ron Lim, Terry Austin, and Tom Smith. The cover is a wraparound, with it looking like our title heroes are swapping interdimensional places, and to the far left are their foes, the Impossible Man and Mr. Mixia Spitlick, both grinning with devious delight. Turns out that old "is your refrigerator running" crank call still works, and they got our heroes to switch universes to chase after their appliances. We begin with a prologue, Metropolis at dawn, and narration painting the peaceful tone of the morning, while cleverly incorporating a classic Superman tagline: the fluttering wings of awakening birds, the roar of an airline jet, and sharing the clouds above this bustling city is a soaring legend draped in primary colors. Not a bird, not a plane. He is Superman. Now that's just clever right there. Yes, it's a typical day in Metropolis, USA. This is the city where the most powerful being on the planet hangs his cape, and yet no one can remember which state it's located in. Isn't that kind of weird? Clark hears a woman scream, but with his supervision he sees that she's already been saved from a mugging by a police officer. A cop and a crook both up and working at dawn? Are they each gunning for a different promotion? It's pretty uneventful, and Supes was about to stop his patrol anyway, so we step one universe over to the Silver Surfer, traveling in a familiar star system until he sees a planet he doesn't recognize. After thousands of years, a barren asteroid has stirred to life. Is someone trying to gentrify this galaxy? The last thing we need is some shoddily constructed McPlanet. He can apparently detect bacteria developing from the primordial ooze, then begins hearing millions of voices crying out to him, and those flames reflected on his body make it look like he got some boss tattoos. He figures his arrival wasn't chance, rather that someone had summoned him, and just as he tries to locate those voices he's hearing, he just disappears in a pop. The Silver Surfer was a kernel of corn this whole time! It's so obvious now! Pop just so happens to be the subtitle of this story. In other parts of the US, some people call it soda. A split splash page features half of each hero looking in horror at the reader. Okay, I know I'm not much to look at, but that's both extreme and rude. Not all of us can be drawn by professionals. On a two-page spread, Superman is inexplicably on planet Krypton, with its panicking populace thinking he's one of the invaders apparently threatening them. Meanwhile, his shiny co-star crashes into a Metropolis street. Chapter 1. Trading Places. Oh, I think I've seen this before. Surfer is a scam artist who gets roped into a bet between two rich guys, while Clark becomes homeless and dresses in a Raggedy Santa suit and drunkenly gnaws on a slab of ham. Talking in Kryptonese doesn't help, only making the people think that he's a spy. Near as you can tell from the placement of stars, he has not been flung back in time to the planet's destruction somehow, and it feels much more real than an illusion really should. As he's trying to recall if he's in an era of one of several conflicts the planet suffered, he's hit with an energy beam. A militia stands in front of Cal as he's beginning to think he is on his native planet, what with the intense pain of that blast. The commander doesn't believe this blue and red stranger is one of them, saying he doesn't have their accent right, because I guess the entire planet was just a single accent. When Clark asks to be taken to a certain science council member, without mentioning that it's his dad, the soldier blasts him again, having never heard of a Jor-El. Superman survives the second hit, which convinces the group that he's an enemy, and they dogpile on him. He throws them off and tries to fly away to find Jor-El, in case the troops were lying about not knowing him, only to hit the ground immediately. Am I really just an amnesiac Caitlin Fairchild? Is Gen 13 around here somewhere? A surprise fire blast knocks back his pursuers, courtesy of someone standing dramatically on a spire. Wow, Tuxedo Mask traded in roses for fire. It doesn't make me care about the Sailor Moon franchise, but good for him on getting the upgrade. It's the Super Skrull, the alien amalgamation of the Fantastic Four's powers. You kind of choose the scenery and must have been reading his back issues, saying the Skrulls have declared Krypton condemned, and even knows Supes' name and parents, as he says he plans to kill him before the rest of the globe. And this is really confusing for Clark. Skrull? What the heck is a Skrull?
But man... So to answer your question, I don't know.
In Metropolis, Surfer's powers are going haywire, as he realizes that, while this is planet Earth, he doesn't know this city, and Matter isn't responding to his manipulation as it usually should. Matter picked a really inconvenient time to get all independent and liberated. Though he's trying to reduce destruction and not harm surrounding innocents, it just causes more damage. He uses his board to shield some citizens from falling rubble, and saves a woman from falling, having to rely on pedestrian methods instead of the power cosmic. The rescued woman, however, would prefer Superman's help.
No! Keep away from me! You're the cause of all this! Also, you're narrating your every move out loud, and that's just plain freaky.
Surfer can hear the same cry for help across the city, like a prayer awaiting an answer. Save us, Superman. And as it happens, a force field surrounded the city in the instant our heroes swapped realities, disrupting power and cutting off communications. This is blamed on the Silver Creature, at least by Erica Alexandra del Portenza, aka the Contessa, a powerful businesswoman introduced in 1995 that took over Lex's company for a while. She sends out some attack drones, through which she declares the Surfer guilty of destruction of company property. Despite Mr. Shiny trying to de-escalate things, the robots fire on him, so he tries returning in kind, only for his blast to spontaneously redirect and destroy a bus that had, thankfully, been evacuated, which usually doesn't happen until after his third Jägermeister. Not wanting to risk another shot that harms innocents, Sylvie makes his way through a robot or two and flies skyward. Intercept velocity beyond systems capabilities. Maybe upgrade your OS and clear out all those games you never play. You can't go through a single round of Minesweeper without smashing your keyboard anyway. Yet something is still amiss. As fast as he's flying, he should be well beyond Earth's atmosphere, and that's when he hits some barrier, shattering it. Oh no! He's broken the fourth wall! Someone get atop there quickly and warn Linkara! He'll be the guy either burning bad comics or reviewing lamps. On maybe Krypton, Clark has yet to really land a punch on his opponent, figuring he must have some kind of invisible force field. Still, the people thinking he's an enemy spy are counting on him, so he's not going to quit. Super Skrull mentions how disappointed he is, saying a little buddy regarded the Boy Scout as an incredibly clever opponent. Deciding to be more sporting, he lowers his force field and offers one free punch to his green jaw. Clark is naturally skeptical of this, to which the villain chides him as being cynical. Oh, the halcyon days when not believing a malicious enemy threatening an entire planet was considered being cynical. If certain movie portrayals of Supes had that kind of cynicism, I might have better enjoyed the DCEU. The Skrull mentions that time is running out on this game, and such a trivial notion that endangers his homeworld sets Clark off, and he charges for an attack, only to be bounced back. He hits a building with more force than anticipated, causing it to collapse and debris to endanger nearby spectators. Superman is too stunned to save them, and one of the rules of the game was no innocent bystanders being hurt, and Super Skrull takes action, protecting the civilians with the power of stretchiness. Getting his bearings and surprised at the selfless act of his enemy, Kent looks closer at the Kryptonians, seeming to blink on and off, and in between each blink they look like completely different aliens. Now this is all making some crazy sense. Orange horse fabric pickle office building magenta! It's all so clear! Skrull Zeeb suggests he was saving the people to be later enslaved, but Clark smiles, knowing he definitely isn't on Krypton. On a splash page, he clobbers his foe into the air, breaking through his invisible shield, telling the imp that the game is over. We return to the Surfer, discovering that he'd actually escaped the glass dome of the miniaturized Metropolis, its populace even more frightened of him now that he encompasses the entire horizon.
Big people feel pain too.
Confused how he regained his normal stature, Sylvie finds himself in the Fortress of Solitude as we begin Chapter 2. Mixed Pickles. Because when I think subtitles for a story involving Superman and the Silver Surfer, I think pickles. Wait, this isn't going to cross over the Rick and Morty 2, is it? I don't think Wendy's can take any more obnoxious customers screaming for Szechuan sauce. Look, Superman has a giant coin in his lair, too. Did he do that just to copy Batman? Are we going to see a giant mechanical space dinosaur in here, too? Anyway, the giant key to the place is fired at him, which Surfer vaporizes with ease, his power seeming to be under control. Don't worry, Clark's got a giant spare key hidden under a giant fake rock. He takes the bottled Metropolis to keep it safe and find an exit, because nothing says safety like taking a city under glass filled with millions of miniaturized citizens on a ride through the enormous fortress filled with death traps all targeting you. But that's when the fortress itself seems to say he knows too much, and the statues of Superman's birth parents spring to life to stop his escape. Norrin reduces the statues to pebbles, just being totally sick of all these distractions and wanting to leave in peace. After evading more threats like a giant robot and a T-Rex, okay, I knew it, Clark is definitely copying Batman, the voice says he can't leave with the secrets of the fortress, which is weird because the people he's trying to protect think he's the reason for their present state. He's told to surrender because his destruction is a certainty, but the Surfer counters that there are no absolute certainties.
Oh, really? Are you absolutely certain about that?
Hey, a fortress with a sense of humor? This is a surprise because word spread from Cybertron across the multiverse that Fortress Maximus tried stand-up one night and it did not go well. Clark is now unfazed by Super Skrull's attacks, punches, flames, or even sneaking up while invisible, which doesn't work because he's apparently a mouth breather, though Cal admits he should have seen through the ruse earlier. His foe whines about things not being fair, rules being broken, and Soups punches him, calling him Mixie a Spitlick. But the last son of Krypton has been fooled further, because this is the Impossible Man. In the fortress, Surfer is flying past more traps, at least thankful they aren't attacking in unison, then is thanked by the disembodied voice for the suggestion. It's then that Rad realizes that no machine is behind these assaults, but a living entity, and I guess he was going too fast to notice this rather distinct silhouette. Impossible Man explains that Mixie, or Mixed Pickles as he calls him, was right, and now that the game is over, there's no need for them to brawl anymore.
Let's play Hungry Hungry Hippos.
Turns out, whenever Impossible Man pops from one place to another, he goes through the dimensional interface, a kind of connected void between realms. One day, he saw what looked like a shadow that just disappeared. As I've asked before, when is Peter Pan going to get a leash on that thing? He waited for it to return, and when it did, he embraced Mixie and called him brother.
Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta hug.
Gotta say, I love this vacantly psychotic expression on his face. They make the proper introductions, finding out that even though they're of different species, one of their shared traits is a love of games. So was hatched one such game where they'd swap opponents. Impy, who's been bereft of anyone in this universe to play with him, will take on Superman, and Mixie would challenge the Silver Surfer, whom Impossible Man felt could use some lightening up. To win, Impy has to convince Superman that Mixie is screwing with him, and vice versa for the fifth-dimensional imp, and the heroes swapped dimensional places to give their foes an advantage. With Impy winning for having tricked Clark first, that should be the end of it, but it apparently requires both of them to switch the heroes back, and Green Jeans has to go declare victory first.
Neither one of us is Access, after all.
Is it because you can't pull off a red and blue motorcycle jacket? Or the name Axel? And here I thought that character only got named once in a DC story since All Access. Anywho, left waiting on an alien world for word to get to a monumental rule breaker like Mixia Spitlick, Clark sees the aliens pointing to the sky. Upon closer supervision inspection, he sees it's a fleet of actual Skrulls, and, despite sound not exactly carrying through space, he can apparently hear the commander order that, based on intel from Super Skrull, the planet will be annihilated for trying to deceive the Skrull Empire. Read the fine print. You could save up to 15% on your insurance. Could! Up to! As the Metropolis shakes, rattles, and rolls in the jar, Impossible Man teleports in.
Hi-ho, everyone! Anybody see a naked, bald silver guy who looks like someone stole his puppy?
Note to self, idea for new Silver Surfer movie, styled after John Wick. Seeing innocents in danger, he calls shenanigans and pops into the fortress to confront his competitor, and gets blasted for his troubles. And again, to pieces, when Surfer thinks Impy was behind it all, even despite protestations that it's beyond his power. When Mixie finally shows himself, he admits to lying about promising that no innocence would be hurt, and the Impossible Man does not like being tricked. It all goes back to those spring snakes inside a can that he was told contained peanut brittle. From there, it becomes a measuring contest of whose universe is better, with the opponents shapeshifting into their home team warriors, and giving us some matchups we'd never normally see. Hulk versus Doomsday, Wolverine versus Wonder Woman, Blob against Batman, who could totally beat him with enough prep time. The list goes on. Even Surfer finds this nutty, like children throwing toys at each other, acting as stand-ins for their respective realities, heroes and villains. Mixie, however, just didn't want Surfer and Soups to tip each other off, and for this matchup, anything else was fair game, including any people caught in the middle.
Are you aiming for these people? No. Maybe that mine.
Surfer uses his powers to transform Impy into a copy of Superman, as Mixia Spitlick mentioned, wanting to see his face while flaunting his victory. However, a copy of some images Norrin saw in Metropolis isn't quite good enough, and he even suggests making the humiliation complete by returning Soups to the city that regarded him so highly, so Mixie could laugh in his face with an audience. He agrees, and so does Impy, who wants to see what the Man of Steel does in that situation. So they shake hands, and one pop later, Clark is back home. But Mixie notes there's a snag with the Surfers still around, when he expected them to switch back. Turns out Impossible Man followed Surfer's specific suggestion to bring Soups back, while not saying anything about returning to the Marvelverse. Since the two of them being in the same reality breaks Derby Boy's one rule, the game is now forfeit. Still not as bad as playing him at Monopoly. However, there are a couple of problems left, namely Metropolis and not Krypton. The latter, a planet actually called Bridoon, used an interactive holographic eco-shield to pose as a dead asteroid and avoid the Skrulls, but that was overridden by Mixie's illusions. Thanks to Impy's method acting as Super Skrull, tipping them off, they're now in dire peril. Surfer says he'll handle restoring the City of Tomorrow, because he can just regrow cities no problem, apparently, something even Impossible Man backs up.
Which is a concept so ridiculous it makes me want to laugh out loud and chortle, but...
Afterwards, Clark will join Shiny Britches to defend the previously hidden aliens who seem to fear Surfer's name when Impy mentioned it around them. And he also thinks he won their trust. Okay, no real indication of either of those things. Considering that Norrin was the herald of Galactus for so long, it makes sense that a cloaked, insulated planet would still fear him. But what did the Blue Boy Scout do to earn their trust? Or did I read that wrong? Mixie also has to get back to the 5th dimension soon, for whatever reason, so they need to get moving. After Surfer restores Metropolis to its proper stature using his rebigulator powers, the heroes fly over the citizens, who are grateful to Superman. Cal tries telling them that the Surfer deserves their praise, but they still think he endangered them, some even chanting to kill the alien, which I'm sure the resident Kryptonian appreciates. Norrin is used to this kind of treatment, but Clark is still committed to convincing the people that the Surfer's okay after the Skrulls have been stopped. Mixie tries to weasel out of it, figuring the aliens would rather take their chances with the Armada than Galactus' herald, but he's reminded of the exact wording used of the rules, and verbally concedes the game. As the Skrulls close in, the planet that Super Skrull said was inhabited once more appears as a giant fireball, and when the commander sees the Silver Surfer just chilling nearby, he figures it was a trap and orders his fleet to vamoose. The worst part is that his boss is going to take the fuel cost out of his next paycheck. The Surfer lands on Bridoon, where he's hailed as a hero, and told his name shall now be honored among their holy pantheon. In the crowd, Superman asks what it feels like to have his bad rep blown and be regarded more positively, and Rad says it's different, even if that same fear he instills ironically sent the Skrulls packing. We arrive at an epilogue, where the two heroes are waiting for the imps. Soups has apparently been made aware of his new pal's past as the food wrangler for a planet eater, and is still feared on his planet, but wants to explore more of the adulation he got from Bridoon, the kind that Soups gets on the regular. Mixie says it's time to go, so the two champions shake hands and will probably forget their trials after enough time in their home universes. But if they meet again, hopefully it'll be more pleasant. They wish each other Godspeed, and Superman returns where he belongs. Mixie and Impy try parting on good terms, but it doesn't end well. And the comic ends with the Silver Surfer smiling, not quite sure why, soaring through the cosmos as any memory of his positive feelings fade away like tiny voices and a faint pop. Because one of those tiny voices opened a can of Pringles. That was Silver Surfer Superman, and it was a lot of fun. What starts out with a mysterious yet seemingly serious situation for each of our stars becomes an outrageous, funny, and even satirical spin on DC Marvel crossovers. I seriously think the imps changing into their universe's fighters was born out of crazy matchups we never got to see before. Mixie and Impy even argue like fanboys debating who would win. It's a lighthearted goof on the more serious crossovers that have come before, and lovingly hilarious. The back cover did kind of spoil for me who was behind the whole mess, but it still managed to surprise me, and it felt fitting to be a game between these two tricksters. I thought something was up when Super Skrull spoke less like the alien yet regal manner of most Skrulls, with those silly nicknames for Superman. At first I thought it was a side effect of having Bang Grimm's powers, like Yancey Street DNA was affecting the Skrull brain or something. Other than that Blink miniseries I covered a while back, I'm not really familiar with Impossible Man, other than he seemed to be a powerful goofball, not unlike Mxyzptlk, yet his insistence that this game not have innocence be hurt shows he's far more compassionate. He likes having fun, and that can get out of hand, but he's not malicious or heartless. Thoughtless, perhaps, like his method acting, exposed Bridoon. Let's hope they never get a visit from Jared Leto. And speaking of, that leads me to a few hiccups in the story. If the planet was using a fancy shield to cloak themselves as a dead asteroid, why did the Surfer detect that life was beginning anew? Or was that the eco portion of the device that got its name? And if it was seen as a lifeless rock for so long, as Norrin mentioned, did they intentionally alter it to appear as though life was forming? Is it like the image you pick on the desktop, and after a while they just felt like changing how their protective camouflage appears to the cosmos? Weird thing to just flip on a whim, but what do I know? I haven't changed my computer's wallpaper in a couple of years. Though, why would I? Seriously though, it was probably part of Mixie's spell to draw him there, so the heroes would swap specific places. I guess we can assume that the Bridoonians, melty face people witnessed Superman's heroics in what he thought was a dangerous situation, and that's how he gained their trust. But there's not much detail given on that. Also, was Kal's loss and or weakened powers part of Mixie's spell, or was he so convinced this was Krypton it was psychosomatic until he realized he'd been had and got all invulnerable again? Supes wanted to defend the planet because he sensed how fearful the aliens were of the Surfer, insisting on going back to the Marvel Universe like he's going to wreck the Skrull Armada, which would have been cool to see, and he doesn't really do anything. It's great that Rad's mere presence tricked them, so they'd leave thinking it was a trap for whatever reason, and it makes more sense, since Supes can't protect Bridoon in case the Skrulls figured the fireball was more important than it looked and came back later. I guess Clark was there more to vouch for the Surfer off-panel. They don't exactly address why everyone involved in this little adventure, aside from the imps, are going to forget. Maybe it's all part of the spell, but after years of so many other crossovers where these characters meet and go back to their worlds, or just exist in the same world for that story, even Access gets a mention, so I guess I'm not seeing a narrative reason. There's also a habit of the characters to monologue out loud what's going on, what they're about to do, and so on, which can feel unnatural at times, but I don't see it as much of a problem. Between the great art and thoroughly entertaining story, those are kind of small potatoes, and I recommend checking this book out. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.